All right, recording's going. And our next topic is introducing affiliated projects. And I think, Artem, I'll let you introduce.
Uh, yeah, thank you. Honestly speaking, I'm not 100% sure whether it's really a TC topic, but that is sort of my problem exactly. I see a sort of problem that I don't know how to address properly. So technically, as you can see already on the other part, thanks for everyone who is also adding notes there. The problem is that from the TC point of view, we are having something like an official OpenStack project, and that's it, and there is nothing more in the OpenStack. So all those projects that majority of us are working on that are not official OpenStack projects, but made explicitly for OpenStack, like Gopher Cloud, like the CLI in Rust that I'm creating, like also Dmitry mentioned, also Metal 3. So there are really plenty of different tools that are explicitly created for working with OpenStack or designed to be working with OpenStack. And we have no possibility to actually signal to the users, to consumers of the OpenStack about that sort of stuff. So when I was doing some of the presentations of my Rust CLI, I had some sort of discussions with people, which is basically immediately raising alarms in my head. So the question was, is it official project? And I'm like, okay, I can't say anything with regard to that because no, it's not official, but does it stop you? So technically speaking, for all of us who are mature enough in the IT, know that this doesn't mean, honestly speaking, a lot. But users do really matter, whether this is official tool, whether there is some sort of guarantee behind that, and stuff like that. And then I also came up again back to the CNCF landscape, where projects, I wouldn't say really affiliated with Kubernetes, but work with Kubernetes are listed. So it's definitely quite a lot of them there listed there. It doesn't make, to me personally, that much sense in the way how it is right now. But I was thinking something into that direction. So how are we able to signal to the consumers, to the users of OpenStack, that certain tools are working great with OpenStack while not being themselves really part of official OpenStack? You can also consider here immediately Ceph. There is, I think, not a single cloud that is running without Ceph, and Ceph is not an official OpenStack project. So how to deal with that? Kubernetes is also pretty much not a single public cloud is offering OpenStack without Kubernetes. So how do we deal also with that? While this is also not an official project. So technically, this is like an idea into the room, and I'm open to hear actually opinions.
So
So
I'll
yeah,
toss this out since it was first. What we're creating is a concept of mental modeling or connection with another project that gives that project both weight on for both sides. So it's like almost a, hey, if you link to me, I'll link to you sort of agreement. Because we know each other, and having that connection in writing someplace helps establish a trust relationship almost. And while some could view this as marketing, I think ultimately it's about there's connection there. There are things that tie together. It's substantial. It doesn't need to be part of like a separate project in certain cases. It just means there's a thing. People care. Here's the awareness of it, and that way you can build that mental context to know there's a thing. So I just think the overall idea is great. I don't know how to model it. I'm not sure we should necessarily be the ones modeling because it is more marketing-y. If there's a staff member on the call that might have thoughts, I'd love to hear them as well, personally.
before we do that, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is not really the direction my brain was pointed at this. I guess from one perspective, it's marketing, but for me, it's more about direct recognition of that there are definitely parts of the OpenStack ecosystem that are super important. quite frankly, maybe even projects that are impacted by decisions made by like the technical committee itself. And so when I think about this, I wasn't just thinking about it being a link. I was thinking about it being some sort of thing to give these folks a voice, to give them, you know, like I said, maybe a little bit of protection in the same way that we wouldn't want a project that was directly competitive to come into the ecosystem. Maybe if, like, you know, we say go for cloud, you're the affiliated Go SDK for OpenStack. Maybe that also implies, you know what, we're not going to let someone come in and create a new project and undermine, you know, you have to work with the existing people, that sort of thing. The other piece is that this is mostly written with the idea of like things that always existed outside of OpenStack, but I would really like the idea of a lower bar level for teams that maybe don't have the juice to release every 6 months or don't have the need to release every 6 months and do PTL elections and DPL. It's just a thing that is putting along, maybe having a way for them to continue calling themselves OpenStack while indicating that they're not like a normal project, that they're not like in the integrated release anymore, but they're a part of the larger OpenStack ecosystem, might be a way for us to sort of tighten the ranks a little bit, right? Like we just talked about how security investment needs to raise up. Well, one of the ways you can raise up the security investment is by, you know, the number of projects being, you know, the projects that are really involved, that have a lot of contributors, and then the ones that are less, maybe not being under that umbrella as much anymore.
Thank you. That's interesting. Anyone responding to the question Julia had? Yeah, Jeremy.
Yeah, just I'll call attention to what Thierry put in the Etherpad there, that the foundation actually already has something called the Open Infra Universe that lists those projects in that category that you're discussing. It's basically the Open Infra equivalent of the CNCF landscape.
Yeah, but I don't get it. Is there something like this already existing or not?
Yes, if you look in the Etherpad, there is a URL to where this exists.
Metal Cube is already on it.
All right, and the way you get on this list is by you know, submitting a project yourself, and there's a button on that page, looks like.
Well, today I learned the Open Infra Universe.
Me as well.
So yes, there was a question on the Etherpad about promoting it. So yeah, I think we should definitely promote that thing.
Yeah, it was kind of a soft launch to see we were slightly worried that, you know, all the distros in the world would like to be listed because there are some distros there, or like it. We weren't 100% sure it had a lot of value, so that's why we under promoted it. But if you see a value in listing a bunch of projects and maybe create categories, whatever, like if there are too many, we can definitely look into that.
Yes, I mean, sorry, I wasn't raising my hand, but I was going to respond to one thing though, which is none of these projects. I mean, if they are even from a distro, they have to be OSI licensed, right? And that should be the, you know, discriminating feature kind of thing. Like you can't really have something that's obscure and you know, proprietary licensed anyway.
Yes, the conditions are listed at the bottom of the page, and yes, it's OSI recognized license, must be to provide infrastructure, basically be open infrastructure, and have some integration with an open infra project. So that would cover all the projects that you mentioned, all the SDKs and all the clients.
And that's a significant departure from the CNCF landscape, which does permit listing proprietary projects, software products.
Jay.
The only question I have about this, and I'm kind of asking it because I don't know if this is coincidence or causality, is that these all seem to be larger, higher level projects that are to the point of like, they have logos. I don't think like all the projects that would fit under this type of umbrella as proposed by Artem like fit this model directly. And I don't know if that's just coincidence because like you have to have, a community manager role or someone who cares enough to go submit the request, or if it's an indicator of the type of projects that end up here, because I could easily imagine this list doubling or tripling if we actually added every OpenStack related project that folks on this call care about to this list that exists here.
I think Eventlet has a logo. Theory?
Yeah, the main reason why those projects all look like they're fully fledged, it's we definitely use the universe as a consolation prize for projects that were not a perfect match for becoming an Open Infra Foundation project. So when we were contacted by some of those projects, and for one reason or another, governance, like there was no or absence of potential for growing as a really open collaboration. Well, some obstacle, we would definitely offer to list them if they fit all the criteria. We would offer to list them on the universe as a consolation prize. So that's why a lot of them look a lot more final than and organized as you think. But there are like some smaller things in there, I think. No, not really.
I guess the question I have is there room to expand that or include the projects that might not have logos, that might only be a couple people with that care a lot, they're invested, or actually doing a thing that brings value universally, but maybe it's just a logo, just they don't care. Maybe it's just a link and some text. Is there a place for that? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I would have to check with Wes, but I see no reason why you couldn't just have the title and no logo in there.
And I just want to follow up on the other part is, I mean, so the conditions are listed on the page, but what is the vetting like? Just as long as you meet those conditions, you're in here, or would you actually consult with the OpenStack folks perhaps, or would you consider doing that?
I mean, we can definitely start a thread on expanding that. There are like multiple ways to do it. We could also just adopt the landscape framework that's being used by CNCF. It's very reusable for if people prefer that form. We could also just adopt that to expand more dramatically. So I feel like we have, as long as we have a place to put friend projects that we consider part of the wider Open Infra family. I think from a foundation perspective, we're good, and we can drive it towards whatever you all need it to be.
Artem?
Oh, I just, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what Terry just said. I was exactly willing to ask whether there is something similar to CNCF landscape where you have Git repository where you can update your information whenever necessary. So at the moment it's cool, but it doesn't really give you interface how to interact, how to add projects, or how to, as a maintainer, what would be the next step after maybe it's submitted. So like, work out those things.
Yeah, I'll just note that the talk about CNCF's landscape, like I don't know if anyone here has actually tried to interact with that and get something added. With a gross hat on, I helped out with our efforts to get Armada project.io, the CNCF Armada, made as a sandbox project, and it was very heavy. Like we had to clear a lot of bars that I wouldn't have expected given that. And so while I agree that like the idea of this like tiered idea or like maybe even just the web design of the landscape might be a cool thing to copy, I would be disappointed if our solution had that level of bureaucracy involved, because I think we're going to run away some of the smaller projects from participating if we were to do that.
I would almost encourage us to be allergic to heavy bureaucracy in such cases. I get that there is a need to maintain brand, but the bar shouldn't be near unobtainium, or it shouldn't be 3 to 6 months of back and forth. I remember back in the metal 3 days, it was like a 6-month ordeal.
Is that 6 business months?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like they are like you have to have your logos in place. There has to be a quick start doc that works. Like it is a high bar when viewed through the lens of what might be a hobbyist SDK.
Yeah, Thierry?
So as a next step, could we have like the people who really care about like the various projects that we would want to have listed in some way? Maybe we can follow up with a meeting that would also include Wes Wilson, who's been building the universe for us, and so that we look into options we have to evolve it into something that can better represent those affiliated projects. Because I agree that under the current form, it's like it was not part of the design constraints, but we can certainly evolve it in a direction that would make it a lot more friendly to the use case that you have here. So if you're interested in attending the first meetings on this, please add your name on the action item at the bottom.
Might I also suggest an action that if folks know of a project that might be a good candidate for this, that they maybe take the time to do that PR into the universe, even if they don't have a logo or something. If it's not complete, at least maybe it'll give us an idea of the scope of this.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. All right, while we're filling that up, anything else about this topic? Adam, did it go in the way you were proposing this topic?
Yeah, thanks. I even remember that I have seen the universe page once, something like a half a year ago or so, but it was nearly empty, so I immediately forgot about that. Yeah, but thanks. It's exactly into that direction.
Perfect. All right. We're keeping great time, and I don't want to jinx it, but I'm going to keep saying that again. All right. So it's 1700 now, and we can switch to the next topic while folks are still adding notes on the previous one. So the next topic here is bridging the gap between the community and contributing orgs, and this is an effort that foundation staff, Jeremy, Ildiko, Clark, others have been leading for the past few cycles. So we're gonna, I think, get some updates about that and discuss it. So Jeremy, who wants to lead this?
Yeah, I can start. So we've got a little bit there in the Etherpad already, but basically just for folks who have hopefully been following along closely, there's a reminder to the mailing list thread we've been using for it, which has gotten some recent posts, and also the actually that is not a link to the thread. That is the link to one of the messages in the thread. But let me get the
That was me.
yeah.
Sorry, I wrote your first message on the mailing list, and I probably.
I'll update it with the thread URL
Thanks.
real quick. But yeah, and also there's we did just have a PTG session. Was that yesterday? I guess that was yesterday. There's a link to the notes from there. That was more or less a oh, someone else already added the thread URL for me. Thank you. That was more or less an office hours kind of get together for people to bring up whatever was useful. And we also did a forum session at the summit a couple of weeks ago. The notes from that are linked in the PTG session notes as well, for anyone who wants to follow up from there. But basically, this is some time on the TC schedule to talk about any outcomes, any potential focus or direction for the upcoming cycle, and what else we could be doing to help. I know that Julia had come up with some ideas that she wanted to raise during this, so like I'd be cool with jumping into whoever has their hands up at this point. I guess Gautam and Clark.
Yes. Yeah. So first, could you folks recap the timeline on the surveys that you've sent out? When are they closing, and when can we start diving into some results, and what your plan for doing that would be?
Yep. So the email thread that's linked there, the last post in it mentions. Actually, the penultimate post had the deadline in there. We said that
I think it's sometime mid-November.
yeah,
Probably
I'm trying to spot where we mentioned that. I thought we had the date on there, but it might actually be on the preambles to the surveys.
I will dig up the date. But yeah, I'm hoping that sometime in December I will be able to send out another round of the big long overview email. We will be looking into both the survey responses as well as the set of metrics again. So I'll do my best to do a little bit of a comparison. I mean, we are not necessarily expecting like huge differences, but it will also be interesting to see how the two cycles, epoxy and flamingo, were different. And yeah, trying to get that out in December, and then we will probably combine a round of team outreach with team specific results and improvement ideas that we started to build based on the first round of data collection and discussions, and obviously the second round of data collections and analysis will build into seeing what ideas are being backed by more data and what ideas might land on a lower priority. So that is all coming. Team specific outreach might land in January just because Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, most of the planet has some of these or a combination. So there's some time that people are just away, not just opening for foundation folks, but also many people from the community are out at various times between now and the end of the year. So we are taking all these things into account.
Yeah. Also worth noting, a major outcome of the feedback from the first round of surveys was that there was a commonality across many of the teams that got feedback. That either they were not coordinating their priorities, or that it was hard for contributors to discover where those priorities were being tracked and how. So we've got some specific questions on the updated survey around prioritization efforts within projects and visibility of those. And we're hoping that will lead to some additional insights from a overall, like, overarching timeline perspective. The epoxy cycle retrospective gave us a baseline to start measuring from, so that we could see where we were. The flamingo cycle perspective here gives us the ability to see how things are starting to change, but in particular, feedback that is coming out of the epoxy cycle retrospective is only starting to get implemented by teams within the flamingo cycle. So, or sorry, well, they came out of the epoxy cycle retrospective that was discussed during the flamingo cycle, was really only starting to get implemented now during the Gazpacho cycle. So it will be the subsequent round, the Gazpacho cycle retrospective, mid next year, where we're most likely going to be able to see any concrete outcomes from the ideas and feedback that the teams have gotten.
I dug up the date. It's November 16.
Awesome.
Clark?
I'll make sure to update the email thread with that.
Thank you. Clark, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that, you know, the purpose behind gathering metrics is twofold. One is to inform us, hopefully, where we're doing things well and where we're not, and so that can then inform any potential tweaks, changes, improvements. And the other is to hopefully measure whether or not those changes are being effective. You know, it's possible we misinterpret things and make things worse or whatever, right? And we want to have that kind of feedback loop. But ultimately, like, I think the goal here is to actually take action to improve the contributor experience for people who are showing up and trying to contribute and bouncing off of whatever issues they're running into, whether that's prioritization and lack of reviewers, whatever. Like, and I think we've been talking about the metrics and the surveys, and I just want to make sure that we're actually thinking about, like, what can we be doing now that we have some data? Like, how do we move forward from here?
Yeah, illegal.
One thing that I don't think we noted just yet, and it came up during yesterday's PTG session, that this effort is not focusing primarily on newcomers and new contributors. We are focusing on maintainers, established contributors, and casual contributors. And we do hope, though, and do expect that if we get to improve the experience of maintainers and established and casual contributors, that will also improve the experience of newcomers also. But the effort itself is focusing on the people in the current existing community and hoping to improve processes, increase bottleneck, remove inefficiencies, and just make the whole community environment a better and nicer and more sustainable place to exist in.
Yeah.
Julia, I think your hand is up. Yes.
Yes. I feel like I'm about to sound like a broken record. And I'm going to try my best not to. I think there's an aspect to this where, yes, we have had a lot of these discussions. We have some distinct problems we've kind of avoided as well as it relates to the contributor experience. And ultimately, it's also very subjective. What might be perceived as a problem for one group or project or set of people, it may be entirely different in another. And that's really hard for us to wrap our heads around, especially when, some people might have deadlines or unreasonable expectations or desire for control. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of this needs to boil down to risk management and perceptions of risk. And, is getting a security fix in a risk? Is the pain a risk? Is the community willing to accept an idea that the needle moves, or resistance to that a risk? And how do we handle those risks? And on some level, there are high level knobs and levers that can be pulled. There are mandates that can be made. Ideally, that's not a great way to do it, but we do also need to spend the time to open people's eyes and build that consensus and culture. And I know a lot of what we've done over the years is consensus and culture. On some aspects, it might be, hey, these are risks. We need to start setting expectations at a higher level that trickle down to individual projects. I realize this is also an area that a lot of people might not be super comfortable with, but again, it goes back to what is risk, how is it perceived, and is the inability that may exist to get a bug fix in or to evolve a project in a logical direction a risk? And how does everyone treat that? And at some level, you know, the further discussion that it evolves to is, what do I move to that allows me to handle this risk? And if that's not OpenStack for folks, then we've done ourselves a disservice by deferring that discussion, because the decision was made for us. We weren't part of it. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does.
To reiterate my understanding, if I got it right, you're saying that we can and should look into all the issues and challenges and bottlenecks and things that we identified, and evaluate them from the perspective that which of those are posing or creating the most risk for the community in terms of prioritizing and solving those issues. And in some cases, if they are identified as risks, then maybe try to be a bit more forceful in terms of the
Yes.
prioritization and solutions.
I will take that one step all different. Risk is perception based.
Okay.
So it's not just the risk that the community has of itself. It's what is the risk that someone perceives from looking into the community from the outside, or looking into a project from the outside. What is their experience, and what did they come away with in terms of how did this go? I mean, and that all piles up together and is very intertwined. And I don't want to pretend that it's not. It is stupidly intertwined, but we do need to be open to having those discussions and improving. And ultimately, it's every one of our jobs to move the needle forward.
Okay, I see Sylvan's hand is up. I'll let him chime in.
I think it's not a simple problem to solve. And I tend to agree with the fact that there are a lot of perceptions in terms of what people think it should be. What I'm trying to explain is that during some previous session, I heard some points that was basically hitting me, because I thought that people were thinking that we don't, for example, if I'm a contributor, I don't like this because I don't know him, or I don't know her. That's a perception that I can see. But for example, during the summits, when I was discussing with operators, basically, I think it was not really that. It was not really that. It was more like, I don't know. It was more like, I don't know how to work with you guys. What Eliko said, I mean, yeah, the problem is that we have different projects each of the projects have different processes. And for me, it's mostly the main issue that we have. Because if I'm an operator, I need to understand exactly what's the process for this and that. And I'm done.
So it feels like you just had a realization that there's a risk in front of you and you don't know how to handle it. And I think that's okay. I think the challenge is that there's an approachability to have that discussion. I think that's the key thing. Have a discussion. And what I would encourage is if you know some of those operators, go reach out to them. Like, because we're all human beings at the end of the day. We all have our different focuses. Maybe there's a way to reach that same page. And I think that's the if we can take those experiences that we have and take those as opportunities to learn and grow, that's the first step.
And that's the perception that I mean, that's a perception. That's a perception because I think people think that operators don't discuss with contributors. Or basically, contributors don't want to have discussions with operators. That's a perception. But eventually, every time that I'm discussing, every time that I'm seeing also what it's for each of the communities that I'm here, we definitely want to discuss with operators.
Yeah. So on the note of different teams having different processes, that's one of the outcomes that we're working toward with this effort is identifying which processes from different teams are possibly having an impact, and then helping them to identify and promote those processes amongst OpenStack in general. So hopefully we might be able to converge on some processes that are an overall net win and improvement in consistency across OpenStack. As far as the actual problems that the operators are facing, I do want to point out that the majority of OpenStack is written by operators. It is written by people who work at companies that either distribute or run OpenStack. And one of the key aspects that has come out of all of the conversations we've had up to this point are that the project maintainers, who I assert are to some extent operators or involved in operator organizations, are experiencing all of these same challenges that the contributors who are trying to get involved more casually have also identified. It's just that the maintainers in many cases are able to find ways to overcome those challenges and continue to get work done and get code merged. So we were hoping to be able to identify the behaviors of maintainers and successful contributors in overcoming some of those challenges so that we can promote those solutions to other people who are also struggling.
Thanks, Jay.
So one thing I wanted to point at is there's a comment in chat. I don't even know whose color this is. Line 274 that says that OpenStack project teams have different processes for people to get involved and contribute. I don't know if y'all know this. You know, like my job is kind of a little more loosey goosey open source than a lot of other folks. So I end up having a lot of conversations set up by my bosses with people who are interested in OpenStack as an open source project for contribution, deployment, whatever. And I can tell you the overwhelming perception among people outside of our community and inside of the community is that if you want to get a feature in OpenStack, you have to have a personal relationship of some kind with one of the maintainers, that it requires sort of consistent, friendly interactions in order to get it. And while I, the human, kind of appreciate that, I want those folks to come have a conversation with me if they're using Ironic about stuff. I'll also note that we've had lots of good experience in Ironic of trying to shift those interactions in the bug tracker to just you file a bug, we try to fix it. And that's kind of what I think is the struggle here is that we have two problems that are sort of heading at each other like freight trains head on, of the perception, which I honestly think is true in a lot of cases, including sometimes for Ironic, that you have to know someone or have an advocate for the feature you want on the core team in order to get it merged, combined with the fact that we're having trouble mentoring and bringing core teams up to date with fresh blood. These problems are heading at each other like a freight train and are leading to even long-term contributors getting frustrated with having their things continually fall outside of the priority window. And so, like, it's not even just a matter of like, do we have a documented process? Do we follow it? You know, like, oh, sorry, you lost out. It's about this perception that the way to get your patch in is to either have Red Hat care about it or have an individual who works on that project care about it. And that's an awful perception of us as a group. And I'm kind of tired of wearing that as an OpenStack contributor.
Yeah, that was one of the things that came up during the Ironic feedback that we got from the surveys, was that while people noted a positive experience contributing on Ironic, they also had the perception that they could only successfully contribute if they were in some way affiliated with or had a mentor on the maintainer team in the Ironic project.
I mean, that fits with my personal experience. Like, it's hard to do even if you try.
Just a quick note that the color in line 274 is mine. I'm trying to take notes of the conversation because I really appreciate the feedback and these challenges that are being mentioned, and I want to make sure that we capture them. And if I get anything wrong, please hop in and correct them, or shout, and then I'll correct them.
So I guess I'm next in the list.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, another perception that I see. When I hear that, for example, why Nova doesn't have any new Nova core, I wonder I wonder whether people know about the metrics that we have for reviews. How many people review Nova changes? How many times new contributor want to review or want to rethink? How many times people know that basically Nova cores discuss? I don't want to discuss only for Nova, but I heard that question before, so that I'm just replaying it now. How many times Nova cores try to find another person that could be another Nova core, and how we could mentor him or her? The perception is indeed that's like, and that was a question that I heard. I think the previous Nova core was only 5 years before. Yeah, indeed, that's definitely late. I definitely agree with you, that's too late. But from the last 5 years, please look at the metrics and try to find who could be the next Nova core. And basically, if the Nova community didn't found it, then tell the cores. Maybe this person could be like the next Nova core. For what it's worth, we are discussing about some members that could be next Nova cores, but for the moment, unfortunately, we don't have anyone yet. So the problem here with reviews, that's what basically the problem. I guess the problem is not about whether we have new Nova cores. The problem is about the reviews. The problem is, okay, basically I want to create a change, but unfortunately nobody reviewed me unless I'm able to discuss with the maintainer. I can't say nah. Yeah, indeed, if the maintainers don't know about your change, your Gary change, unfortunately, it's difficult for us to know about that. Maybe the process is bad. Maybe we can fix the process. Maybe the capacity that we have for the Nova cores is a bit small. Yes, indeed, this is. But again, we can just have a better capacity because, unfortunately, we are here where we are. And just to be honest, I think that if you look at Gerrit about who is the Nova core, I think you will be surprised. Anyway, I'm discussing about Nova. This is not a Nova discussion. This is a larger discussion for all the OpenStack projects. But this was just an example for saying this is not that simple to fix. At least for reviews, this is not that simple because we don't have a lot of people. They also have their own priorities. So in order to make sure that people can be reviewed, that's why we have processes.
I think Julia, you're next.
So I guess I'm saddened to hear people have that perception currently of Ironic when we have gone through the process of trying to foster new cores and grow our team. And I think ultimately it's maybe an artifact of passion. The core maintainers are passionate about what they care about and what they want to move forward, and that passion may be a barrier for entry for folks. And maybe the key takeaway is to continue to try and lower the barriers for entry and also extend trust. We've done that fairly recently, I guess, within the last year and a half. But it seems like we probably need to do that more, and maybe just be willing to reevaluate and extend the olive branch further. It feels like probably the same thing. It's just at the end of the day, our passion drives us, and we can't let it drag ourselves down or the projects down. And so we need to make decisions based on what is best for the project.
Jay.
Yeah, I think there's value in considering that even though we might have projects exhibiting the same type of problem from a user standpoint, that the causes could be different. So for instance, in Ironic, if you were trying to get a patch merged and you came into our IRC and asked for help, you're probably going to get that help. But that doesn't mean that it's okay that you had to get help to get that patch merged. And in the case of Ironic, I know the things I hear all the time, hell, even from people on my own team who are working nearly full-time on Ironic now, is that the CI is impenetrable. And so if you're an external person just trying to post a change and get it landed in Ironic, unless you have someone who knows the CI holding your hand going through it, then you're going to have trouble. I don't necessarily think that could indicate that the community is unfriendly or unwilling to mentor or anything like that. It just indicates that we have baked in so much complexity at every level in our CI, in our software, in our documentation, that it takes literally months, if not years of momentum to get to that point. And so while we do think of this and talk about this in terms of a community problem, we do need to recognize that there is a significant technical element to this of just literally it being, I've said this before and I'll say it again, that you have to be a senior level OpenStack DevOps coded engineer to troubleshoot DevStack CI in most projects, or at least for Ironic in the projects that I work on typically. And I would suspect that that is the high bar that needs your hand held as often as it is literally just someone getting attention on a review or a bug or whatever, because I don't think code review is the jam in Ironic. Typically it's CI, but in other projects it might be review, in other projects it might be personal mentorship. So we just need to be careful that just because some of the conclusions might rhyme across the projects, that the causes may not rhyme.
Yeah, and chiming in on the Ironic examples and with the review feedback, I wasn't trying to be depressing. I'll note that the survey feedback we were looking at was for the epoxy cycle retrospective. The Ironic team changed their core reviewer model early in the Flamingo cycle. So like one of the things that I'm eager to see as an outcome of the Flamingo cycle retrospective survey results and metrics is, did that have a positive impact on these perceptions, on overall throughput for reviewing and so forth. So I mean, these are like looking at where we were, but now we're somewhere else, and it'll be interesting to see if that's better than where we were.
Yeah, and this is anecdata, but what I'll tell you is that the folks who we gave that on-ramp to, who we gave them, a little bit of access, it paid back in terms of their investment into the community as well. So I think there's like value in that, like the perception in OpenStack. I remember asking someone this day one that I opened Garrett is, what's the point of doing a code review if you have a +1? And so I think that some of the route out of this is being willing to give someone that middle ground pathway of like, you have some power, you have some authority, but maybe not the authority to wreck the world. And so like there's some sense of being able to like that if you grant people responsibility, that will in turn like cause them to behave more responsibly. And I think there's some aspect of that at play here.
There are some sidebar conversations on the chat. If there's anything relevant, please do add it back to the Etherpad.
Yeah. Otherwise, it seems like conversation is dying down a bit on this. So if anybody else had anything they wanted to bring up on this topic, I think we've still got a few minutes left on the schedule.
I think the conversation and the feedback and the bringing up challenges / risks is a great one. I don't think we will be able to come up with solutions in the remaining 7 minutes for the topic. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, way back when I added the tangential note about it's kind of not, it's a little bit contributor experience with the outreachy interns jumping onto OpenStack and OpenStack Dev, thinking that they were going to be seeing a large community there, and it's basically just crickets. So I feel like we've got maybe it's more of a first contact SIG point of view, but we've got a problem there and wanted to solicit ideas for how we might solve it.
You mean the note about the IRC channels that are sort of
line
empty?
268.
268.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the other related problems that we saw was a lot of the outreachy interns were ending up in the Zool matrix room because the outreachy mentors had pointed them to the Zool community's documentation on how to use the OFTC matrix bridge to get on IRC, and they were following it halfway, ending up in the Zool matrix room and starting to ask OpenStack project outreachy questions.
Right. So there's a little bit outreachy specific things that could happen here, but more generally, those IRC channels, which, they bear fairly broad-reaching names, OpenStack and OpenStack Dev, basically nobody hangs out in there anymore. Whereas, you go back 10 years or whatever, they were very busy channels. So do we want to try and reinvigorate them? I doubt that's going to succeed. Could we redirect them somewhere else? Well, if there was somewhere else to redirect them to, maybe we should take that in the other direction, because we don't really want people jumping into like OpenStack Ironic or OpenStack Nova or OpenDev or OpenStack Infra and asking generic questions. But it would be nice if we had a room where people could.
Yeah, that's sorry. I'm just jumping through it, but that's something I'm sad because previously many people were in at least OpenStack or OpenStack Dev And you know where you are a contributor, whether you are an operator or a developer, but it was so freaking simple to just go to OpenStack Dev, find the RC nick and just ping him in OpenStack Dev without trying to find exactly in which project that person was working for. I definitely would like the other direction that will say, honestly, I know it's not that simple to ask people to do that, but I would rather prefer to ask people to join OpenStack or OpenStack Dev or any kind of channel that basically we are all here, because it will be so simpler for people wanting to discuss without exactly knowing which specific project we are working for. It should be also simple for contributors that want to discuss about cross-project discussions without exactly also knowing about which channel they need to use. I think it will be so simpler if we are still all of us in the same channel, and basically we are just one team, right? So that's also why I would rather prefer to continue to have that one channel with all the people in there, at least asking them to join.
I'm not sure if we've discussed this specific thing around OpenStack and OpenStack Dev in the past, but I mean, there was a thing in the project team guide, I think, at some point asking for project maintainers to be parked there with highlights. So if in case somebody is asking questions about a specific project, it's okay to redirect them to a specific channel, but maybe some folks would not know how to do that if you are not there yourself. That would be
yeah. Part of the problem with that is, like, I'm obviously there and I obviously see the void, but quite often somebody will jump in and my guess is they're new to IRC. They'll ask a question, they won't get a response, and they'll leave 10 minutes later. So there's like a very short window to capture that and redirect people if that's actually going to be a valuable first contact point. So if we had more people in the channel, then that's likely to be less of a problem. But yeah, like the number of times I go to reply to somebody and they've already logged off because, part of that is I live in Australia, so nobody else lives here, apparently. It's always crickets when I'm around.
Along with all the other kind of wildlife. But
sure.
No, really, I mean, that seems like something we could solve with a bot or something, right? That we could, if we could parse what the question is, we could just say, hey, this looks like a question for this channel.
Yeah, I mean, we probably could, but yeah, I don't know. I would, maybe we could start by emailing OpenStack Discuss and saying, hey, maybe people want to go back to hanging out on those channels for cross-project discussions or something like that, and see if that makes any kind of difference. Whoever has the
Julia.
next in the queue.
It's not a bad idea to do that outreach and to build that awareness and consensus. And maybe a follow-on question is, do people really think these channels matter? I don't know. I'm hesitant to throw any weight or thought behind building bots to do things. And I guess because some of the feedback I've gotten in the past week is, software responding to people is bad or without context. Yeah. And I can kind of see where these people are coming from with those perceptions. It's not a human connection. And, the human connections are what drive us forward. That and passion.
Totally agree. Yes. I would like people to be there, not bots. But yeah, I think Clark was next.
No, Jeremy.
Not me.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say let's go ahead and wrap this up because we are at time for the schedule and there's another session, another topic coming up right after this.
Perfect. And that's on time again. Lovely. And this is the last topic, so I don't care about jinxing it. So we're on time for the next topic. This is about Project Cascade. And we have Professor Corey Leong here, and he can introduce the project and tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks so much there, Gotham. I know it's been a long day for everybody, so I won't keep you too much longer. But for the past almost a year now, I've been working on a small project, Cascade, with another gentleman. He's actually not even one of my students. He actually reached out to me from he's in Pakistan, and he was interested in helping me work on this or start this project, Cascade, which deals with contact centers or unified communications. Back in March, I attended the Enterprise Connect conference, and the usual suspects were there. Usually Google, and Zoom, and Cisco, and WebEx showing off all the wares. But the one thing that wasn't there was there wasn't any open source project to develop and fill that gap between proprietary and open source. So I believe this project that I've started fills that gap. It allows companies, possibly startups or nonprofits, to adopt. They would be the early adopters of an open source project like this, to then customize on their own, to run on their on-prem or in their cloud, and being able to develop this project under the OpenStack umbrella, I think fits really nice with all the other projects. The other advantages, and I know Gotham knows this, that I teach around 7 or 8 courses per semester. So I have an army of potential contributors to contribute to this project on a semesterly, yearly basis, to not only just start it, but then also have a roadmap and have it being included in future releases. So I'm just wondering, at this point, I've gone through the documentation. Jeremy, who's been wonderful, has helped me create a repository underneath the X namespace space. I was just wondering, what other steps do I need to take to make this project an official OpenStack project? Is there a vote? Do I need to attend a live event and to have the technical committee vote on this? I'm just curious to know what else I need to know what to do, Gotham.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, lots to unpack over there. I think we have not had a project in a similar space, right? But there is there's a new project requirement. Thanks, Jeremy, for adding that link. And that's the way you would get into get under the OpenStack governance. And I suppose you would need to have a project team to begin with. So I suppose you're forming one, and you're bringing the code in from, and you're already hosting your code on the OpenDevKit server. That's nice.
Yes, I have everything set up, but I would like to move it over to the OpenStack namespace.
Is there any kind of CI that's currently running on this project?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Is there any kind of CI that's running on this project already?
No, not yet. Not yet. It's just very, very beginning here.
I see.
Just to understand, I basically looked at the overall diagram. So here the proposal is about running a specific service that would provide asterisks as top of as some platform, so that it could use like the networking service and storage services for for that, right? It's basically bare metal plus asterisk, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out exactly like Jay, exactly what's the implication in terms of technology involved in that one. I mean, are you trying to deploy? Are you trying to deploy asterisks on top of bare metal machines? Are you proposing to directly deploy some images? Is it like an image service? I mean, I don't know. That's where I guess I'm confused, because there are multiple ways to achieve that specific use case.
Mm-hmm.
Without necessarily needing a new project. So, I mean, I'm not debating exactly your case. I'm just trying to exactly understand exactly what the project is in terms of technology being used.
Well, we're trying to fill that gap of unified communications. You know, like voice, phone, video, and just making that all open source using the other open source project or OpenStack projects to allow an organization to just download, install on-prem on their machines to run natively, and they can customize it themselves.
Okay. Sean had a question, maybe?
I'm second in the queue.
You're second, so
Yeah,
bad.
Amy.
So maybe I'm not understanding this, and that seems to be a theme. But is this really an OpenStack project, or is it something that would go in the marketplace because it utilizes OpenStack?
What was that? Oh, sorry, Amy. Is it really an OpenStack project, or?
Yeah, or is it something, I mean, that would go in the marketplace?
The marketplace.
So the marketplace is open source or even commercial projects that run on top of OpenStack. When I think OpenStack project, I think Nova, Neutron, Keystone, parts of OpenStack itself. And looking at the README and the architectural diagrams, I'm getting more of a runs on top of OpenStack feel.
My question was also related to this. Is it more contact center as a service akin to Trove? So Trove, if you're not familiar with it, it's database as a service. It will deploy databases for you using Cinder and Nova to be able to execute them. But it's multi-tenant, so like tenants can ask for multiple database clusters, and it does the lifecycle management for you. So is Cascade going to do that, where you can ask it to deploy this contact center for you and potentially having many of them, and provides the lifecycle management of that software? Or is it just an application that goes on top? Because in that case, the marketplace might be an option. The other option might be to be under the Open Infra Foundation as a top level thing, kind of like Kasha or Zool, etc. That is
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, we were actually looking at the former there to actually integrate and create plugins with the actual OpenStack, other OpenStack projects, not sitting on top.
So I guess my question was kind of very similar to Sean's. In the mental modeling, a service inside of our wider community that interacts with other services in our community does seem shaped like that. I guess the question is ultimately the usage pattern, and are you taking and doing things for users in a managed building block way to provide some sort of infrastructure service? And I think that's kind of the mental dividing line we're trying to reach, because we don't entirely understand the use pattern. Maybe at some point it might be better just to kind of demo it or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I think my read of the discussion is like there's some possibility here, but I think we are all struggling with like what are the details behind this, just so that we can kind of frame it, and that's where we're all kind of struggling.
Understood. Well, again, it's still early days on this, but the idea is to integrate it with the other components, and just allow free configurations by the users. So that's the idea behind all of this, to just to allow enterprises to communicate using what's already there.
Can you maybe give an example of what type of integration or like the workflow you're perceiving? So if I have an OpenStack cloud, I deploy this.
Yeah.
How do I use it, and how does it integrate with what services?
Well, the first service we were looking at was a PBX, the phone branch exchange, and look at possibly creating some kind of maybe plug-in with Asterisk, and or allowing it to actually run within our service. And so that's an open source type project. And again, we're still sort of researching this, but that would be one of the first things that we're looking at right now.
So to kind of take a step back, it sounds like you're still working on incubating the idea, but it sounds like if everything were to come to fruition, you'd end up with an API that any OpenStack user could invoke potentially if they had rights or the specific access granted in the environment. Say, I want to create my own unique contact center, which might spin up an asterisk VoIP PBX with specific configuration for their use case, and they might have some other endpoints where they can have automated configuration happen, and then they have a PBX.
Right.
And another user can come along 10 minutes later and do an entirely separate PBX, and there's a dividing line there where those two PBXs don't really see each other unless they are intentionally configuring them together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what you're explaining, and to me, that kind of sounds very much along the lines of OpenStack. Just it's a different use case. It's very much more like the Trove service modeling, but it sounds like maybe there's an opportunity to incubate and to collaborate and help maybe get some interested parties to try and mentor a little bit, I guess, maybe.
Okay. Yep. I agree.
Sylvan?
No, I mean, I just raised my hand when Julia said that, yes, there is an opportunity. The opportunity is that, from what I understand, you would like to have this kind of application layer as a service that you would like to deploy using the OpenStack resources, including networking, storage, but also, I guess, compute, because you will have to probably deploy the application layer on top of some kind of either bare metal or VM, or even container. That's probably something that has to be drawn. So yeah, I would say the next step for you should be like identifying exactly the relationship in between all the OpenStack projects that you would like to interconnect with, all the dependencies if you prefer, because I mean, when I looked at your GitHub, and that's basically what Amy said, well, that's pretty unclear to me exactly how you're gonna use those OpenStack shared services, as you mentioned, as kind of dependencies for your use case. So before we go further, I mean, I guess we probably need to better understand not only the case, but also I would say the interactions in between the other OpenStack components and the new component that you're going to propose.
So one thing I still want to understand, is this something that should be incubated in the Open Infra community or in OpenStack itself? And one of the things I want to touch on to try and determine this is we have an authentication component called Keystone, where we list the endpoints and we use that as a common way of doing authentication between the other REST APIs. So for example, do you see integrating that with any of the components that you would be deploying, or just with the control plane that's going to do the deployment of the PBX? Or maybe another example, to deploy the PBX, would you integrate with Nova from Cascade to create a VM, or Ironic to deploy a physical server that you then install the PBX onto? Because so far, when I asked the question about what services you integrate with, you talked about services that would be integrated within Cascade, but you haven't specified any of the OpenStack services that Cascade would integrate with.
Corey, sorry, I had to mute you because of background noise, but please unmute if you're trying to talk. Corey, can you hear us?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Thanks. Just the basic services at first, integrating with Nova and Neutron, and also integrating with Keystone. And there's probably a lot of trial and error that needs to be done, a little bit of experimenting here and there. But we could definitely look at different options of deploying the service.
Tony?
Yeah, so I'd like to I'd like to ask a different question. You've currently got the OpenDevX Cascade namespace. What is it that you've asked to move it from the X namespace into the OpenStack namespace? What is it that you think that will give you that you don't already have where you are?
Just allow our contributors to start contributing.
You can contribute where it is. Like there's nothing stopping you using Gerrit or IRC or any of our other infrastructure with the tooling with the repo that you've got at the moment.
Yeah.
There's no technical barrier stopping your students or your other developers from using that. So I'm not against the idea. I'm just trying to understand what the motivation is.
Just to be able to start building it. I don't have access to the wiki, and the wiki would help with publishing diagrams and documentation to help with the coding.
Okay, so that's not tied to the OpenStack namespace. You should be able to just add something to the wiki, and if you're having problems with that, you've got my email address, Corey. Reach out, and I'll help you with that part.
He was running into that OpenID bug that we see crop up from time to time, where Launchpad is somehow providing an OpenID that the OpenID plugin in MediaWiki insists is invalid, and so it half auto creates the account but won't log you in with the ID. And sometimes we've seen that go away. I don't know how recently you retried to log in, Corey. It might work now, but also Tony is directly working on a rebuild of the current wiki infrastructure that we hope will address that problem sometime in the near future as well. At least my hope is that whatever that bug is something that got fixed in later iterations of the OpenID plugin in MediaWiki.
Yeah, it's possible. But that, I mean, going back to my original question, again, I don't want to sound argumentative, but being in the OpenStack namespace isn't going to resolve that particular access problem to the wiki. So yeah, I'm still trying to understand what switching the namespace and becoming a quote-unquote official OpenStack project gives you that you don't have at the moment. Is it just a sense of legitimacy or something non-tangible along those lines? Or yeah.
Hey Tony, we're a little bit over, and Julia, unless you want to round up the discussion, we could try and do that here and then move this to a weekly meeting.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think I was going to basically try and point out that it feels like there's an attempt to understand what would it be, but also a perception that I am blocked from doing a thing, and there's nothing that should be blocking perception wise. And if there is, then let's try and highlight and focus on that. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that well sums it up. I think there's a lot that probably, there's nothing stopping you from continuing to develop this in the on the OpenDev system that you have gotten on, but probably some small technical difficulties that we should probably iron out. And you could connect with us on the openstack-tc channel on OFTC, and we can further this discussion or bring it back to a weekly meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Folks have stayed on over here for a long time. So thank you so much. Firstly, I mean, a massive thanks to everyone. A lot of energy that came in through the week, a lot of deep dives, a lot of thoughtful conversations that happened here. Whether you were just, bringing these conversations in or you were pitching in, this is deeply, deeply appreciated. Please take a moment, step away and I guess, discard this mental load a little bit and enjoy your weekend. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you very much for running it, by the way. I know that's it's a hard week to be TC chair, so thank you very much. You've done a great job, and thanks for running things.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Gotham, and thank you everyone for participating in all the discussions.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks. Bye.